The Astrojet Gulfstream 200 crash in Dominican Republic. The Gulfstream 200, it's not a Gulfstream 200, it's an Astrojet. It was built in Israel. Gulfstream bought that jet and just started retrofitting it. So when you say Gulfstream 200, it's really an Astrojet made in Israel. That plane was not necessarily old. It's a 2007, but to get it serviced, you have to take it to Gulfstream. It's very expensive because that plane, it's not a Gulfstream. If you get a Gulfstream plane, it's easier to get the maintenance done. You just take it to Gulfstream, or you can take it to places all over the United States that can do the maintenance. An Astrojet is an oddball jet because it's made and manufactured in Israel. It's got a very critical wing, but the biggest problem with that plane is it's capable of dumping fuel. Why is that? Because if you take off and you lose the engine and you come back and land, you're too heavy to land. I mean, you'll tear the plane up landing. You gotta be able to dump fuel. It's a complicated system. On your check ride, you have to be able to show that you can work that complicated system and dump fuel. If you take off heavy, if you're going from the Dominican Republic over the ocean to Texas, you gotta have a lot of fuel. There's only 2 people on board, so they were probably full of fuel so they can make it in one stop and not having to stop and get fuel. It looks like they lost the engine. They took off, they lost the engine. They're out there circling because they're working that complicated system to dump some fuel so they won't be so heavy when they come back and land. They went out there and circled. We don't know what they're doing. I'm sure they're running a checklist to dump the fuel to be lighter. You can't land that plane heavy. You can't land any plane heavy because it'll tear the plane up. You know, it's just too heavy to land. So they're saying they lost the engine. They went over the ocean circling, which they're probably trying to dump fuel so they're not too heavy to land. They came back single engine, tried to land, and had to go missed approach to come back to do another one. Then when they came back, they landed kind of downwind with the wind to their back. So we don't really know what happened, but our speculation is they lost the engine, they were too heavy to land, they went out their circle to burn off some fuel, to dump some fuel, and come back and try and land. Now, according to what I looked up, that plane is based, it's not based in the United States. It has a United States N number, but it's not based in the United States. If you're rich and you're in Texas and you want to fly somewhere, get a plane out of Texas that's based in Texas. It has better maintenance. If you're getting a plane out of Puerto Rico because that's your buddies, they ain't doing the maintenance like it gets done in the United States. You take any plane to Gulfstream or Cessna, it's getting top-notch maintenance. Everything's getting fixed. They're not skimping, they're not skipping on parts, they're not deferring, oh, we'll fix this next time, we'll fix this next time, we'll fix this next time. They're not gonna do that. A lot of planes, the United States will not allow them into the United States. These cheaper operators in other countries get these older airplanes and just piece them together, just to keep them going to make money. And you can't do that with an airplane. Watch my video on cheap maintenance and cheap owners. I mean, that's just something that you cannot do. Now, if you watch the video when they're landing, it looks like they were fast and heavy. That's why they bounced and tore the plane up and killed them. The Astrojet, you can't land it heavy. If you take off full of fuel, full of people, and you got a problem and come back and land, it's just too heavy. Any jet, before you land, you're gonna calculate in the FMS, the runway length, the runway conditions, the air density, the wind, the weight of the plane. And when you do those calculations, it's going to give you a number, 110 knots. That's your number that you're going to land at. So if you're in an Astrojet and you're full of fuel, you're going to the Dominican Republic all the way to Texas, and you're putting those numbers in, it's going to blink red. It's not going to let you come up with the number because you're too heavy. So you have to fly around and get rid of some of that weight. The only way to get rid of that weight is to dump fuel. It's a complicated system on the Astrojet. Now, that's probably what they were doing. And if you're doing single engine in a simulator is different than doing single engine for real in the airplane. It's nerve-wracking. Can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. I don't know how that plane flies on one engine. I just don't know. But any jet has to be certified to be able to fly on one engine. It looks like they came back and landed in a rush, fast, downwind, heavy. And that's why they bounced and tore the plane up and killed themselves. Now, what's the lesson to this story? Don't be cheap trying to buy an oddball jet. The maintenance is expensive. Nobody wants to work on it. There's very few places you can take it. You call some of these 1,000 service centers in America, say, I got a 2007 Gulfstream 200. No, you don't have a Gulfstream 200. You got an Astrojet from Israel with the name changed. They don't want to work on it. They don't have the parts. They don't have the manual. They don't have the experience, the mechanics, and they don't want to put their name on it. You have to take it to Gulfstream. And it's even more expensive because you don't have the parts, you don't have the maintenance, you don't have the mechanics, and they're gonna overly do the maintenance on that airplane. It's just too expensive. And nobody wants that plane. If you look on Controller, there's more Cessna Citation jets for sale than any other airplane. Why? Everybody can work on it. Everybody likes to work on it. There's plenty of parts. It's the safest airplane. Why would anybody buy an Astrojet? I don't know. These old airplanes, Astrojet, Sabreliner, Beech 400s, you can get them cheap all day long. Nobody wants to work on them. There's no parts. The maintenance is just through the roof. These owners get them cheap, but then the maintenance just kills you. You would be better off getting a Cessna Citation. I wouldn't even look at a Lear. I wouldn't even look at a Challenger. I wouldn't even look at any of those. The best plane you can get on the planet is a Citation jet. I don't understand why these cheap owners think they can go cheap and get these oddball jets and fly them and be safe, because you can't. Now, you're only as good as your maintenance. You're only as good as your pilot. I'm here in the Philippines. I got a Ford Raptor. My water pump's out. Second time in 6 months. I go to the Ford dealership in Dumaguete. They ain't got no water pump. If your water pump goes out in America, 1 mile from your house, there's 20 stores that have the water pump. AutoZone, Advance, all the auto parts places. You can go to Ford and go to every Ford and get it. Can't do it in Dumaguete. You got to order it out of the country. It's got to come through Manila. It's got to pass customs. It takes weeks to get a stinking water pump here. Same thing with the Astrojet. It's made in Israel. Gulfstream in South Carolina, wherever it is, South Carolina, they're making parts like crazy. They got warehouses full of parts. They don't have warehouses full of parts for an Astrojet, for a Gulfstream 200. I know people that fly the plane. Gulfstream takes that plane, puts new avionics in it, puts new things on it. I don't even know why they want to mess with that. They got plenty of money making Gulfstream 700s. Why do they want to mess with an Astrojet and call it a Gulfstream 200? I don't know. These owners buy them cheap. They think they're never going to have to spend money on them. They don't fix them correctly. They don't do the maintenance. And this is what you get. I would never rent a plane from a foreign country. Just don't do it. America will not let some of these operators from these other countries even come in our airspace with these planes. They don't do the maintenance. The pilots aren't trained. They're just unsafe airplanes. You need, if it ain't a Cessna, I wouldn't even get in it. Lear's okay. Challenger Jet's okay. Those planes are okay. They're just a high dollar, high maintenance airplane. But these old operators that fly these 25, 30, 40-year-old jets, just don't get in them. Before you get in a plane, I would ask, what kind of plane is it? How old is it? If it says Cessna citation and it's less than 20, 25 years old, that's what you want to get on. Ask them, where did the pilots get their training? Oh, we did in-house training. A lot of these third world countries, they do in-house training. I don't even know if there's a simulator for the Astrojet in the United States. I'm sure Gulfstream has one where you can go on the simulator, take off, engine out, run the checklist, and dump that fuel with that complicated fuel system. It's one of the few airplanes that you can dump fuel. Most planes, if you take off and you lose the engine and you got to come back and land and you're heavy, you just put the gear down and the flaps down and fly it around a circle with a high power and burn the fuel off. You can do that in Astrojet, but it's a complicated system to dump fuel so you're light when you land. You can't land that plane heavy. Can't land any plane heavy. It has a critical wing. Yeah, all swept airplanes have a critical wing. A Cessna 172 has a critical wing when you fly it below the proper airspeed, especially when landing. So the moral to this story, stay out of these old airplanes. Stay out of these old jets. Before you get in a jet, if you're rich and you're gonna rent a jet, ask them, what jet am I renting? How old is the jet? They don't want to say. Ask them, where did the pilots get training? If the pilots are not trained at flight safety, I wouldn't get in it. I don't care. There's 10 other places, cheap places to get training, in-house training. I just wouldn't do it. If they didn't get trained, when you go to flight safety, you're gonna be trained on every possible emergency. Now, I will say this about flight safety. 80% of their instructors are good. 20%, they're not good. If you go there and you get a bad instructor that's a jackass, that's cussing, that's needling you, go to the head of operations and tell them you want a new instructor. Don't put up with that. I've been there before and had wonderful instructors at flight safety. And I've also been there before and had complete jackasses. A lot of times, these old pilots that lose their medical and can't fly anymore, they want to still be reveling and fly, they go to these flight safeties and these other places and teach because they want to keep flying, and that's the way they can keep flying. But they're bitter, they're angry, they got their old ways of doing things, and they're not everybody can teach. Not everybody is a teacher. I don't have a lot of gifts in life, but one of my gifts is I'm a good teacher. I can teach a dead monkey to fly an airplane. I can teach a bowling ball to fly an airplane. But that's the question you want to ask. What kind of plane is it? How old is it? Where did the pilots get trained? If it's not, the plane's not less, I'd say 25, I'd say 20 years old. If the plane's older than 20, don't even get on it. Call somebody else. If the pilots did not get trained at flight safety, if they say, oh, they got trained at a professional center, in-house training in Utah, don't even get on a plane. If it's not Cessna, don't get on. If it's not less than 20 years old, don't get on. If the pilots were not trained at flight safety don't get on. A lot of the insurance companies, they want the pilots trained every 6 months. Now, and you know, you can get a higher insurance rate and get with a cheapo insurance and maybe get trained once a year. And some of them will let you do this in-house training. The minimum to get insurance. And you're only as good as your maintenance and your training of your pilots. So the Gulfstream 200 crash, we don't know. My speculation, and this is speculation, the plane was heavy. They were trying to dump fuel. They were single engine. And we don't know where they got trained. That's going to be the big question. They might have went to flight safety. They might have left flight safety yesterday. I don't know. But these other little countries that buy these cheap planes and run them on the cheap, train the pilots on the cheap, stay away from them. Single engine, landed heavy, landed downwind. Terrible situation. It's difficult to watch. But that's what it is. It's not a Gulfstream 200. It's an Astrojet made in Israel. Gulfstream bought them. That is the real story of the crash. Now, we don't know everything. More things will come out. As more things come out, I'll put it together and give you my commentary. Thanks.